When people think of Mahatma Gandhi, they often picture a saintly figure, a frail man in homespun cloth, armed only with truth and non-violence, standing against the might of empire. For generations, he has been celebrated as the father of the Indian nation and a global symbol of moral courage. His image adorns currency. His birthday is marked as the International Day of Nonviolence, and his methods inspired leaders from Martin Luther King Jr. to Nelson Mandela. Yet, beneath this revered image lies a far more complex and contested legacy. In recent decades, scholars, activists, and ordinary citizens have increasingly questioned the traditional heroic portrayal of Gandhi, pointing to troubling aspects of his views and actions on race, caste, gender, and politics. This narration explores that complexity, not to diminish Gandhi's historical importance, but to understand him more honestly as a human being shaped by his time, full of contradictions, achievements, and serious flaws, drawing directly from the research provided when people think of friendly F. Gandhi's early political life in South Africa, where he lived from 1893 to 1914, is often described as the crucible in which his philosophy of satyagraha was formed. However, this period also reveals some of the most controversial aspects of his legacy. As a young lawyer, Gandhi fought for the civil rights of Indians living under a racially stratified colonial system. Yet in doing so, he frequently contrasted Indians with black Africans in deeply derogatory ways. In his writings and petitions, Gandhi described Africans as savage, raw, and prone to indolence, while portraying Indians as heirs to an ancient and superior civilization. He objected strongly to Indians being housed in the same prisons as black Africans and used racial slurs common in colonial discourse. At one point, he even wrote that the white race in South Africa should be the predominating race, reflecting an acceptance of the racial hierarchy of the time. These statements have led many modern critics to label the early Gandhi as racist, fueling movements such as #Gandhi must fall and contributing to the removal of his statues in places like the University of Ghana. Defenders of Gandhi argue that these views must be understood within the context of late 19th century colonial society and emphasize that his outlook evolved significantly over time. Initially, Gandhi believed that demonstrating Indian loyalty to the British Empire, such as by organizing an Indian ambulance corps during the Boer War, might earn Indians greater rights. His early prejudices were shaped by his upbringing and limited exposure to African communities. Over time, as he developed satyagraha, Gandhi's thinking broadened. He began to criticize injustice more universally and acknowledged the central role of Africans in South Africa's future, even admitting that Europeans had no moral right to the land they occupied. Admirers such as Nelson Mandela have argued that Gandhi eventually shed his early prejudices. Still, the racist language and assumptions in his early writings remain a deeply uncomfortable part of his record, illustrating how a man who fought oppression could also perpetuate it. When Gandhi returned to India in 1915, he emerged as the central leader of the independence movement, championing nonviolence and mass civil disobedience. Through campaigns such as the Non-Cooperation Movement, the Salt March, and Quit India, he mobilized millions of ordinary Indians to challenge British authority. His insistence that moral means were inseparable from political ends gave the freedom struggle a unique ethical dimension and won India international sympathy. Yet, Gandhi's uncompromising commitment to nonviolence also drew intense criticism. The most famous example came in 1922 when he abruptly called off the non-cooperation movement after a protest in Chowri Chowra turned violent, resulting in the deaths of 22 policemen. Many nationalist leaders, including Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose, believed this decision squandered a moment of mass momentum and allowed the British to regain control. To Gandhi, however, any movement that descended into violence had already failed, even if it delayed freedom. This tension between moral purity and political pragmatism defined much of Gandhi's leadership and placed him in direct conflict with revolutionary nationalists. Figures such as Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad believed that violence was a justified response to colonial brutality. Gandhi rejected this view entirely, condemning revolutionary acts as misguided and immoral. His refusal to publicly endorse clemency for Bhagat Singh after his death sentence, and his characterization of revolutionary violence as criminal alienated many young Indians who saw Bhagat Singh as a hero and martyr. Critics have long argued that Gandhi could have used his political leverage more forcefully to save Bhagat Singh but chose not to, prioritizing negotiations with the British instead. Whether this was a tragic moral compromise or a principled stand remains one of the most emotionally charged debates surrounding his leadership. Gandhi's political style also troubled leaders from other ideological perspectives. Muslim League figures such as Muhammad Ali Jinnah were uneasy with Gandhi's blending of religion and politics, including his use of Hindu symbolism and religious language in mass mobilization. Although Gandhi consistently preached Hindu-Muslim unity and opposed the partition of India, critics argue that his approach failed to stem the rising tide of communalism. Ironically, Hindu extremists accused him of the opposite failing, being too accommodating to Muslims and too committed to secularism. To them, Gandhi's nonviolence and insistence on intercommunal harmony amounted to betrayal. These sentiments culminated in his assassination by Nathuram Godse in 1948 and persist today among fringe groups that glorify his killer and blame Gandhi for partition. Perhaps no area of Gandhi's legacy is more contentious than his views on caste and his relationship with the Dalit community. Gandhi was a vocal opponent of untouchability, which he called a moral blot on Hinduism. He lived with Dalits, cleaned toilets, to emphasize the dignity of labor, and undertook fasts to pressure caste Hindus into reform. He introduced the term Harijan, meaning children of God, to replace the word untouchable, believing it would restore dignity. Yet, many Dalit leaders rejected this label as patronizing. The most profound conflict emerged between Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the foremost Dalit intellectual and leader. Their clash reached its peak in 1932 when the British proposed separate electorates for Dalits. Gandhi opposed this fiercely, fearing it would permanently divide Hindu society, and began a fast unto death. Under immense pressure, Ambedkar agreed to the Pune Pact, abandoning separate electorates in exchange for reserved seats within a joint electorate. Ambedkar later described this as a tragic choice between saving Gandhi's life and safeguarding Dalit political rights. At the heart of this conflict lay fundamentally different visions of social justice. Gandhi believed that caste could be reformed from within Hinduism and supported the traditional Varna system as a division of labor, so long as untouchability was abolished. Ambedkar rejected this outright, arguing that caste itself was inherently oppressive and had to be annihilated. He accused Gandhi of prioritizing Hindu unity over genuine equality and of using moral appeals rather than structural change. In independent India, Ambedkar's influence would be felt through the constitution, which outlawed untouchability, while Gandhi's more spiritual, reformist approach to caste remains deeply contested. For many Dalit scholars today, Gandhi's legacy on caste is seen as well-intentioned but fundamentally inadequate and even regressive. Gandhi's personal life, often portrayed as ascetic and disciplined, also contains troubling contradictions. His vow of lifelong celibacy and commitment to brahmacharya were central to his self-image as a moral exemplar. However, in the final years of his life, Gandhi undertook what he called experiments to test his self-control by sleeping naked beside young women, including his teenage grandniece. He claimed these practices were spiritual exercises designed to prove that he had conquered sexual desire. Even at the time, Some of his closest associates were horrified, and a few resigned in protest. The wider public remained largely unaware until decades later, when historians brought these episodes to light. While there is no evidence of sexual assault, modern critics view these actions as deeply inappropriate, highlighting issues of power, consent, and patriarchal authority. Even sympathetic biographers have described these experiments as indefensible, complicating the moral authority Gandhi claimed. In the years since his assassination, Gandhi's image as a global saint dominated public memory. Yet, as social values have shifted and historical scholarship has deepened, that image has been rigorously reassessed. Around the world, particularly in Africa and parts of Europe, activists have challenged the presence of Gandhi's statues, citing his early racist writings. Within India, Dalit movements increasingly foreground Ambedkar as a more radical and effective champion of equality, while Hindu nationalists attack Gandhi for entirely different reasons, accusing him of weakening Hindu society. Academic historians have responded by producing more nuanced biographies that neither deify nor demonize him, instead presenting Gandhi as a deeply influential yet deeply flawed figure. Ultimately, reassessing Gandhi does not mean erasing his achievements. His role in pioneering nonviolent resistance and mobilizing millions against colonial rule remains extraordinary. At the same time, acknowledging his racism, caste conservatism, patriarchal attitudes, and moral absolutism allows for a more honest understanding of history. Gandhi was not a flawless saint, but a complex human being, capable of profound insight and serious error. Engaging critically with his legacy enriches rather than diminishes our understanding of him. It reminds us that moral icons, like all historical figures, must be examined in full, with both admiration and scrutiny, if their lives are to offer meaningful lessons for the present.